The downside is that consumers don't like it because you're interfering with the cars that they can drive and their kind of sense of freedom.
That was from this week's Environment and Climate Change Committee meeting, and that person was Professor Benjamin Sovacool. Great name, eh? Professor of Earth and Environment at Boston University. He was asked about the proposals of the expansion of the ultra-low emission zones in London, and have we done it wrong? What can we now do, in his experience, to get ourselves back from there, by Baroness Young of Old Scone. Sorry for laughing, but the irony of the title's just not lost on me. But here's his reaction.
So I wouldn't say you've done it wrong. I think this is a normal consumer reaction. I was very young, but even when London announced congestion road pricing, which was one of the first in the world, it in Singapore, similar reactions. Oh my gosh, we have to pay for roads, we have to pay to get into the city, and you had everyone talk about the difficulties of how that would hurt London's economies, which all turned out not to be true. I also think that actually it's part of why EVs in the UK are pretty green compared to other places. And so I talked a little bit earlier about the policy mix for EV promotion. And again, you can kind of already see the ingredients, lots of interventions with taxes, providing the availability of charging infrastructure. It's not a very complicated approach that places like Norway, the Netherlands, even China have taken. But if you go up a level, how well does your EV policy integrate with your climate policy or your sustainability policy? And here you get into some really tricky issues, like EVs in certain contexts are actually quite bad socially. If they're encouraging excessive driving, if they're getting someone who's wealthy to buy a third car, if they're only doing single occupancy trips, if they're being recharged with gas, oil, or coal, if they're charging at peak times, and if you're not really paying attention to the supply chain, i.e. minerals, if you don't care where the minerals come from, and you don't care about waste. On the flip side, if you integrate EVs with intermodal transport, which London has done, because you integrate it with the tube and cycling and Boris bikes and all of these things, and you have ULEV policies. And if you also promote ride sharing, which London does, and if you implement it in tandem with active transport, provide incentives for decarbonized electricity supply, charge at off-peak times, and care about manufacturing and ethical cobalt and lithium, then it's a very different picture. It's kind of like whether EVs are novel and re-entrench bad driving or kind of transformative and break the kind of chain of fossil fuels and, you know, kind of single occupancy passenger vehicle modalities remains to be seen. But it's up to you. It's kind of the policies can steer whether it makes sense or not. And ULEV policies are a piece of that. And I think they're the right piece because they're trying to capture these massive externalities with transport. We did a global meta assessment of externalities. These are the hidden social costs of transportation and electricity, and found for transportation, there are more than 13 trillion a year, 13 trillion in unpriced transport-based externalities, mostly traffic jams and congestion, but also roads, air pollution, noise, and so forth. EVs contribute almost none of them, right? So the more that you can get EVs on the road or other low emissions vehicles has immense benefits. The air pollution benefits alone pay for them. The downside is that consumers don't like it because you're interfering with the cars that they can drive and their kind of sense of freedom. So I think it's a very normal reaction, but in this case, I think it is the right reaction because healthy air and air quality, actually in most urban areas, the World Health Organization has said in the world's 300 largest cities, you have 300 violators of air quality standards, right? So getting dirty air out of our cities for our children and for just the elderly and other populations is really important. And I think that's probably the biggest reason to do low emission zones is air quality benefits.
Well, what do you guys think? Well, especially you people in London. His last comment about losing their freedom struck a chord with me because I heard a call on the James O'Brien show this week when they were talking about this subject. And he said, when you're behind the wheel, you're in control of your own little space, your own little bubble, I suppose. And if someone is hindering that control, you're not a happy bunny, are you? Hence the word road rage. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. Also, if you enjoy this video, give it a like. And if you want to watch more interesting select committee meetings, look no further than here. And just leaves it to say, have a lovely weekend and take care, my friends.